There is a photograph that tells you everything you need to know about what happened to Malaysia. It was taken at night, somewhere between midnight and the hour when the city stops pretending to be alive. The photographer aimed his lens upward, far upward, at two steel and glass monoliths punching through the clouds above Kuala Lumpur. The Petronas Twin Towers, still lit, still gleaming, still performing their magnificence for an audience that was no longer there. The skybridge connecting them, once a pilgrimage site for millions of tourists from every corner of the planet, sat in silence. The observation deck, which once required tickets booked weeks in advance because demand was so relentless, now had queues so short they barely existed. The plaza beneath the towers, which used to pulse with the noise of 100 languages, the click of 1,000 cameras, the electric hum of human wonder, was quiet in a way that a place built for crowds should never be quiet. That photograph should have been on the front page of every financial newspaper in Southeast Asia. Because what happened to tourism in Malaysia is not merely a story about a pandemic, or a visa policy, or an airline route. What happened to Malaysia is a story about a country that wagered its identity, its economy, and its global reputation on a single spectacular bet, and then watched the world walk away. This is the story of how Malaysia built the most recognizable skyline in Southeast Asia, engineered an entire tourism economy around that skyline, and then found itself staring into an abyss of empty hotel lobbies, abandoned tour buses, and the haunting silence of towers that no one came to see. This is an economic thriller, and it begins as all great economic thrillers do, with extraordinary ambition. The year is 1992. Malaysia is not yet the Malaysia the world would come to know. It is a country in the middle of a metamorphosis so aggressive, so deliberate, so almost violently intentional that it would reshape the physical and economic geography of Southeast Asia within a single decade. Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad, a man who understood the psychology of nations better than most economists understood spreadsheets, had a vision as simple as it was audacious. He wanted Malaysia to stop being overlooked. Southeast Asia at that time had a hierarchy of prestige that was largely fixed. Singapore was the financial brain. Thailand was the cultural heart. Indonesia was the geological giant. Malaysia sat somewhere in the middle, respected, but not magnetic, stable, but not spectacular. Mahathir understood that in a world increasingly driven by perception, image, and the intangible currency of global attention, being merely competent was a sentence to irrelevance. He needed a symbol, something physical, towering, undeniable, that would force the world to look at Malaysia and recalibrate. The project that emerged was not just a real estate development. It was a geopolitical statement encoded in steel, the Petronas Twin Towers. Designed by Cesar Pelli and built by two competing construction teams, the towers became proof that a developing nation could build something unprecedented. When completed in 1998, they became the tallest buildings in the world. For 6 years, Malaysia stood literally at the top of the world. And the world noticed. A tourism machine grew around them. The skybridge and observation decks were open to the public. Free tickets were distributed daily to maximize footfall. People queued before dawn. People flew to Kuala Lumpur just to stand in that queue. The towers became Malaysia's Eiffel Tower, its identity, its postcard, its global signal. The KLCC district expanded into a world-class urban ecosystem: parks, malls, hotels, corporate towers. Tourism numbers surged from 10 million arrivals in 2000 to over 24 million by 2010, and 26.1 million by 2019. Tourism revenue reached tens of billions in Malaysian ringgit, supporting millions of jobs. Then came 2020. The COVID-19 pandemic did not just damage tourism, it collapsed it. Arrivals fell by over 80%. Borders closed. Flights stopped. The tourism economy, built on human movement, froze overnight. Hotels emptied. Airlines shrank. Tour operators vanished. The Petronas Towers closed to visitors. And for the first time, the towers stood not as a symbol of arrival, but of absence. When the world reopened, Malaysia did not recover at the same pace as its regional competitors. Thailand aggressively rebooted tourism. Indonesia leaned into Bali's long-stay digital nomad economy. Singapore doubled down on luxury transit and experience tourism. Malaysia, meanwhile, struggled with positioning. Landmarks, but lacked a compelling modern narrative. It had infrastructure, but lagged in marketing agility and experience innovation. The Petronas Towers, once the center of global attention, had become static, beautiful but unchanged, admired but not urgently desired. Meanwhile, China's outbound tourism patterns shifted after reopening, with younger travelers favoring Japan, South Korea, and other experiential destinations. Malaysia lost momentum in a key source market. Even Kuala Lumpur itself revealed structural cracks, overbuilt hotels, declining occupancy rates, and pressure on pricing that weakened long-term profitability. A weakening ringgit added complexity, cheaper for tourists, but signaling economic fragility to high-value travelers who prioritize stability and perception. Political instability, airline disruptions, and long-term reputational shadows, including unresolved incidents like MH370, further complicated Malaysia's global image. And beneath all of this lies. What exactly is Malaysia selling? France sells culture. Japan sells refinement and identity. Thailand sells sensory intensity. Bali sells transformation. Malaysia, for years, sold everything, which in practice meant it sold nothing with enough clarity. Malaysia Truly Asia was once brilliant. But as Southeast Asia became more interconnected, accessible, and digitally visible, diversity alone stopped being a competitive advantage. Today, travelers don't need to come to Malaysia to experience Asia, they can see it everywhere before they even arrive. Even the Petronas Towers, once a must-see global icon, have become a recognizable image without urgent travel demand attached to it. Competing destinations evolved their experiences. Singapore transformed Marina Bay Sands into an evolving entertainment ecosystem. Tokyo embedded its towers into immersive cultural districts. Malaysia largely preserved the original experience. Yet Malaysia is not without extraordinary. Borneo's rainforests, orangutans, and biodiversity rank among the most important ecological tourism assets in the world. Penang and Malacca offer UNESCO heritage depth and cultural layering that rivals any regional competitor. Georgetown in particular has emerged as a globally respected urban cultural destination. The challenge is not absence of value, but lack of unified storytelling and strategic packaging. Tourism economics now depend heavily on yield, not just arrivals. Malaysia still relies heavily on short-stay visitors, especially from Singapore, which inflates numbers without maximizing revenue per visitor. True high-value tourism, long stays, multi-region travel, luxury and experience-driven spending, is still underdeveloped compared to competitors like the Maldives or Bali. Currency weakness, while helpful for affordability, also signals instability, which can deter premium travelers. The government's Visit Malaysia 2026 initiative aims to reverse this trajectory, targeting 35.6 million visitors and significantly higher tourism revenue. Investments in infrastructure, visa reforms, ecotourism, and cultural branding are underway. But the core challenge remains strategic. Malaysia must define what it is beyond its skyline. Because the towers already succeeded in doing their job. They made Malaysia visible. Now the question is whether Malaysia can make itself desirable again. The Petronas Twin Towers still stand, unchanged, luminous, dominant. But what surrounds them has become the real indicator of Malaysia's tourism future, the presence, or absence, of the world beneath them.